Hello everyone, and welcome to another Bottled Sky devlog. This video marks the beginning of version 0.2 development, where instead of focusing on creating new features, we improve the features that already exist. This means new art, animation, sound effects, music, and so on. The goal is to quickly get a small polished game to show off for things like showcase events and early playtesters and the like. Stick around until later in the video for an announcement regarding some deadline plans that I teased in the very first video of this series. As I've said multiple times now, I'm not the only one working on the game, so I'll start by showing off some early art from Max. Ever since the beginning of September, Max has been churning out concept art for the shuttle, asteroids, the first enemy, and even characters that may appear in the story. All of this is of course just a rough draft and not how it may appear in the final game. The intent is just to explore the new art style and find a color palette we're happy with. The first thing I started on was the background. Here is what the background looked like before I began rebuilding this game. Due to the boundless nature of the explorable world, I couldn't rely on an infinite amount of art assets, so I designed a system that could create this effect mostly on the fly. However, the system I designed is rather heavy on CPU resources, meaning that it was difficult to run on slower devices, which I was hoping to still target. Later, I was made aware of an alternative solution using a very low performance cost shader. This would free up all of those CPU resources, allowing the game to run much smoother on older devices at the cost of having less control over how it looks. Despite having less control, I think this still looks pretty good, so I'm considering this to be the permanent solution for now. After that, I wanted to get started on writing some music to listen to as you explore around in space. I've written some music both casually and professionally for video games, but the games I've worked on have been level-based, where a level had a theme, and I would just write some music to fit that theme. But in Bottled Sky, I am expecting at least half of your gameplay will be in space, which won't take on a level-based structure. I don't want to have the same short song repeating ad nauseum for half of your gameplay, so I'll break it down into different parts based on what you're doing and how much danger you're in. For example, I can differentiate between traveling through areas you've already been to and areas that contain threats you haven't yet encountered. I can also differentiate between whether or not you're in combat and whether the fight appears to be going in your favor. I've accumulated a list of music based on these criteria that I might make, and I started looking for inspiration for all of these themes. I mainly looked at soundtracks for other video games to find ideas that might fit particular criteria. This leaves me with several unique lists containing songs tailored for different criteria. Trying to build an entire soundtrack feels like a daunting task, so with this I can choose one piece of music that I want to make and listen to some songs I've chosen that fit. Music I want to write first will be the music that plays when exploring areas of space that don't contain any new threats. Not necessarily safe, just things you already know how to deal with and therefore relatively safe, so I want to encourage further exploration to get the player trying something new. I can then pull up the list of songs that I have associated with this criteria. If you check these songs out for yourself, you might find that they all sound quite different from each other. I'm not looking to copy a style because I already have my own. I'm looking at their structure and how they approach certain key aspects like harmony, rhythm, loop points, introduction sections, and so on. I'm looking for aspects that are consistent across several different games and trying to understand why there might be consistencies and whether I should apply those aspects to my own work. Another thing that I did was build something that I call a motif library. Musically speaking, a motif is a short melodic, harmonic, or rhythmic idea that may repeat throughout a song. I would write down any musical ideas that come to mind into the motif library. This is something I probably should have started a long time ago, because I've had musical ideas sitting in my head for many months. A Motif library isn't just for one song, however, it will be used for the entire soundtrack. One thing you might notice if you listen to video game soundtracks is that you might hear the same melody appear in several different songs, representing very different parts of the game. This has several beneficial uses for productivity, but a more interesting concept is to use motifs as a storytelling device. Imagine you meet a character early on in a story, and a certain melody plays. Maybe they end up traveling with you for most of the story, and their theme plays whenever you talk with them. Now imagine meeting the villain of the story, and they have their own theme, but it sounds like a variation on your companion's theme. What conclusions could you draw from that before anyone even says a word? At this point, I've already written nearly 5 pages of sheet music with original motifs ranging from short or unfinished ideas that last a few seconds to fully formed sections of music. I've definitely written enough motifs to pull a few that I think will fit and create some music for adventuring. I'm just a little bit slow at writing music, so it's not done yet. Before I end the video, I have one more thing to talk about, which I mentioned in the first video of the series, but I hadn't finalized the details yet. Sometime in late 2019, I was streaming in development of Bottled Sky when I started talking with a chatter who mentioned that they were looking to get into publishing indie games. This chatter ran a Swedish business called Spelkollektivet, which is a place that provides living and working spaces targeted at game developers like myself. Normally, you would pay to stay there, but they were offering free access to all of their services as a way of investing into the development of games in return for various rights as a publisher. This sounded interesting to me because it meant that I could devote much more time to developing Bottled Sky without having to worry about many of the things that normally distract me from game development. I made plans to visit in early 2020, but worldwide circumstances at the time prevented me from going, and those plans were repeatedly delayed and then stalled indefinitely. Development on Bottled Sky gradually ground to a halt because I needed extra jobs to support myself during the pandemic. Eventually, my situation stabilized and I was able to get back to working on the game, although I was out of practice and it was tough to navigate the code I'd initially written. That led me to decide on rebuilding the game from scratch and starting this YouTube series, and you can see all of that progress documented up until now. I never lost contact with Spelkollektivet, however. This was an opportunity that was still exciting to me, and they were still keen on publishing Bottled Sky. We just needed to sort out details of the arrangement, which took some time, and that's why I teased it in the first video of this series, but couldn't follow through with more details. Until now, that is. The publishing arrangement is now finalized. For now though, nothing changes. I will still be working on the game at roughly the same pace until the end of the year. I still have my part-time job that I'm keeping until the end of the year, but sometime in January next year, Max and I will travel to Sweden and get settled into Spelkollektivet where we can work more closely on Bottled Sky full-time. This brings me to my self-imposed deadline. I can only get a visa to stay in Sweden for 1 year, and I'd like Bottled Sky to be feature complete and at least mostly polished before I have to return from Sweden. I would prefer to finish maybe around November 2023 so that I can spend some time traveling around before I have to return. The deadline set by our contract is actually more generous than this, so my deadline is actually self-imposed, and if I miss it then I still have plenty of time to finish the game after I return from Sweden. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. I did say in the last video that I expected this month to have less new content, but there's always progress and new stuff in the works. Expect more art from Max next month, and I should finish this first piece of music for exploration, and I'll likely get started on some sound effects or UI. I'm looking forward to how Bottled Sky starts to shape up over the next month, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe to see more future videos. Thanks for watching, that's all for now, and I'll see you later.